phenols, because before was part 1, this is part 2. We're going to be talking about rosmarinic acid. Yes, rosmarinic acid. We're going to talk about urushiol, or urushiol, you know, tomato. We're going to talk about 6-gingerol. That's right, 6-gingerol. We're going to talk about coumarin, and because we're talking about coumarin, we're going to talk about coumadin and warfarin. All right, warfarin. Now we're going to also get into beliferone. All right, on beliferone. Then we're going to get into psoralen. Okay, psoralen. We're also going to end up getting into, after psoralen, we're going to jump into curcumin. I know y'all heard that term before. We're going to talk about that a little bit. After the curcumin, we're going to get into the flavonols, which are quercetin. Okay, and we're also going to get into camphorol. All right, and then also naringenin. All right, after quercetin, camphorol, and naringenin, we're going to get into silibin. All right, a little bit of silibin, a little bit of NDGA. Okay, that's Nordi hydroguaiuric acid. Okay, and then we're going to pretty much close on safrole and aka MDMA. That's right, methylene dioxymethamphetamine, specifically 3,4 methylene dioxyamphetamine, right? Methamphetamine. So we're gonna go through all of these: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's like 15. We're about to go through some of these molecules. I'm gonna show you the structures. We're gonna go over some of the structures, how they look, so you can see them. Because when you see these structures, then you start getting a better understanding of how they interact with other things inside the body, with other molecules, with other pathways. It's a communication system, okay? It's cell phone, it's 3G, 4G, 5G, whatever G network, you know, being able to tune in frequencies, you know, 107.9, whatever, turn it on CBS, ABC, is tuning into a particular frequency. That's what all of these things are. They're structural, they contain energy, and based on the energy and the structural components, then also language being spoken. So if you understand the language of plants, then you can communicate with your environment a lot better through your body, okay? Because your body is a communicator. This is how you deal with your external world, because this ain't all you are, it's a suit, right? So we're gonna go through all of these. We're gonna draw out the structures. I'm gonna talk about them a little bit, where they're found, what they do, and what they stand for, so we can get a better just grasp on the whole phenol aspect of these plant secondary metabolites. Okay, we went over saponins, you know, we went over flower parts, we went over terpenes, you know, we've been going through it, and we're gonna even talk about lignans here. Next, we're gonna get into the anthocyanins. Okay, when we talk about anthocyanins, we talking about all those wonderful molecules that give flowers their beautiful magenta and purple colors, as well as the berries, their rich, deep purple colors, anthocyanins. And when you hear the word cyanins, you think of cyanide, you know what I mean? You're like, oh man, is there cyanide? No, it's just called cyanids because cyan deals with blue, not because they metabolize into cyanide like linamarin does, you know, when you eat cassava, you know. So that's a whole nother story. All right, so let's start going through these things here. All right, I'm just making sure everything is good as to go. All right, and we rolling. All right, so like I said, rosmarinic acid. All right, rosmarinic acid, and rosmarinic acid is specifically in rose marinus officinalis, okay, also known as rosemary, okay, rosemary. You will also find rosmarinic acid in another plant called Salvia officinalis or Salvia, I think it's albidum. Okay, don't quote me on it, but it means white sage. Okay, sage official. All right, and sage white. So when you're thinking of rosemary and you're thinking of sage, you think of very aromatic, very fragrant herbs, very fragrant spices, and they're used in so many foods and cultural practices. Is unbelievable. Essential oils, everything. And remember, when we talk about aromaticity, you're not just talking about the aromatics, the scent, the smell, but the aromaticity of the molecule. Okay, the aromaticity of the molecule. And if you remember when we got into the last part, I broke down, I don't know my own strength, y'all, I broke down the joint, okay? So we already know, as before, we have the above and below electron pi orbitals, okay? That then arc, react with one another, and then fluctuate between the two states, okay, in order to yield a bi-ring system that induces a magnetic field, okay? Phenols, energy, the body is electric, all right? So we got into that. Now remember, the whole concept of inducing that electrical components is what makes it called a aromatic ring, all right? Aromatic ring. So you know when you think about rosemary and sage, it's aromatic, all right? So let's get into the actual structure of rosmarinic acid, all right? Let's see what we got here. So this is the structure of rosmarinic acid. You know, you see these two phenols right here. There go a phenol right there. There go a phenol right there. And they're held together by this oxygen. You know what I mean? This oxygen right here. Got these two structures together, all right? Forming one unit. And this unit is a chemical messenger. This thing is it's an electrical component. But remember, design denotes function. So just in something's functionality, it creates its potential and its kinetic energy. Because if I make a screwdriver, based on its shape, you look at it, you know that you could put that in the head of a screw and you can turn. And in the rotation and turn of it, you know, you create a circumstance, you create work. So in this rosmarinic acid, you'll find this inside of rosemary and you'll find this inside of sage. Now, sage, let me tell you, sage is where people start talking about pseudoscience, right? They want to say, oh yeah, y'all be smudging that. So smudging is a technique where you take either common sage, Salvia officinalis, or you take white sage, Salvia albidum. Like I said, I know it's albino something. It's albi, you know, because every time you got Alba, alba, you know, you're dealing with white, all right? So you got white sage, you got official sage, you got common sage rather. And when you dry it and you bundle them up, you get something called a smudge stick, which is a very dense bundle of either common or white sage. Now, this dense bundle has this sage on. Remember, sage is very furry. Why are they furry? They're furry because of the trichomes, because of the coverings over all the leaves that contains all of these terpenes and oils, so forth and so on. We're right now talking about a phenylpropanoid by the name of rosmarinic acid, but you also got sageone. You know, you got other chemical components inside this plant also, and they're all over these leaves. So you see them. So then what ends up happening is, because it's so dense and because you have all of these flammable oils inside of the leaves, then when you ignite, when you add fire to it, start decarboxylating, then what happens is the terpenes are heated, the oils are heated, and now you get noble gases. so to speak. You get fumes, you get vapors, and those vapors are known to do what? Based on the studies, go Google them on Sage, they already did it, that it purifies 95% of your environment when you burn it. What does that mean? That means gases, xenobiotics. Somebody could have just passed gas or something. There could be a rotten fish in a corner or a dead rat. You know, certain bacteria, microbes, viruses, people sneezing, touching stuff. You don't know what's going on in your immediate environment, what's around you. You got aerosols and things coming from the atmosphere, exhaust from the cars, acidic rain. You got so many things that turn into gases inside your atmosphere that you inhale, that get on your skin, that get in your immediate environment, on your pots and pans and everything like that. So what do? You burn some sage. You see what I'm saying? You burn some rosemary too. Rosmarinic acid is one of the things that's inside of these plants, and that gets released and it purifies the environment. So if it purifies the environment, then what does it do with the inner space, with the inner environment? I believe it does the same thing. You know, you can't just, you know, put it in your mouth and burn it. You know what I'm saying? You got to extract properties. You got to utilize the herb so that the components inside become bioavailable. You see what I'm saying? That's what you want to do. So we have these phenyl groups. You know, we got some OHs here, you know, the double bonds, and it's connected by this oxygen. And this particular molecule right here, like I said, it assists in purification of the environment around you. But when you get it inside your body, we're talking about activating your inner antioxidant system. You know, Inky went into it real tough with the NRF2 system. You know, we went in Detroit, you know, on a real good lecture. We went in detail into all of that. But when you're talking about glutathione and you're talking about, you know, the nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide enzymes that you have that are able to become antioxidants, specifically scavenging all of these free radicals that are occurring inside your body. These are unsettled atoms and molecules where their outer orbital does not have anything to balance it out, does not have anything to make it complete. You know, if you think about people that are happily married or happily in relationships, they have somebody with them that complements what they are, and because they complement what they are, so that's like having your outer orbital filled, so you're more stable. Okay, y'all have a stable connection, y'all got a foundation. You know, when you deal with single people, you know, I'm not knocking people that are single, of course, because everybody that's in a relationship was once there, obviously. But when you're dealing with single, you know, you're not that stable because it's just you know, and I'm not saying focusing on yourself, worrying about yourself is instability. Not at all. That's how you build and become greatness. But what I'm saying, you know, when you're talking about family and moving forward, you know, the future, your purpose and what you're here to do, and keeping your genetics on, because you're not going to keep your genetics by yourself. I don't care how godly you become, you're not going to create no seed to pass yourself down unless you get with a woman and you pass it down. You see? So when you end up getting with, you know, somebody else and making that connection, you create a great stability. And that's like the difference between antioxidants and free radicals in your body. These are the molecules that are able to bind with these scavengers, and in binding with the scavenger actually brings stability to the actual molecule, and based on its hydrophilic nature that it becomes, it can then be secreted from the body through urine if it is toxic, unless it gets converted into something that your body can actually use, you know. All right, so that's rosmarinic acid. All right, so I said we was gonna talk about what next? Urushiol. Yes, urushiol. All right, so urushiol comes. It's an element inside of a plant called Rus toxicodendron. Okay, yes, Rus toxicodendron. All right, Rus toxicodendron for common folk is also known as poison ivy. That's right, poison ivy. All right, and if you don't know what poison ivy is, just remember the leaves come in threes. All right, the leaves come in threes, and it's a vine. All right, And y'all, I know a lot of people that had experiences with poison ivy before, rolling through the woods, you know, it got on your skin, you started itching, scratching, and that's because of the structure of this particular plant, you know what I'm saying, in particular. All right, so that's urushiol. Now you see this long chain, all right? That long chain, these are molecules that are able to get through the skin. You know, when you have things that are able to get through membranes, if they get through too quickly, if it's too much of it, then it's going to cause a reaction, obviously, because your body is not built to just let anything in. That's what the skin is for. So if you have something that just kind of like diffuses through your skin and it gets into an area where it could really cause a reaction, and you know, you definitely got a problem. So, you know, the skin gets very irritated, you know, when coming in contact with urushiol, and this is one of the main components. It's really I think this is urushiol A. But there's a number of urushiols that's a whole mix inside poison ivy that when you touch it with your skin, remember, this is nothing you're putting in your mouth. You know, you're not injecting it in your blood, like you're just brushing against it. So it has to be something that deals with the membranes. And if you see this chain right here, you know, it almost has a chain long like, you know, CoQ10, you know, which stands for 10 isoprene units, you know, that is able to do what? Move within the lipid hydrophobic area of the mitochondria, you know, where water's not allowed because it's high hydrophobicity, you know. So urushiol A has this long chain right here, and that's what creates, you know, the irritation on the skin. And I show that because I'm not here to say that all plants is great. No, plant is, it's like don't even personify them like that. Like they're good and they're bad depending on the context and what you're using them for. What you're using them for. You know, are you trying to heal? Are you trying to poison? Are you trying to kill? Are you trying to resurrect? You know, what are you doing with the plant? And depending upon what your intent is, determines upon what becomes valuable to you from a plant, what plant you're going to search out. So poison ivy could be very valuable to a certain person. You know what I mean? Especially if you're creating a situation where you don't want a group of people coming nowhere on your property, you know, in a certain particular area, maybe the one area that seems to be like a little weak link, you just shroud it with a bunch of poison ivy and poisonous plants. So if anybody finds their way coming through there, you know what I mean? They have no idea what they just stepped into. You know, so we did urushiol. Now we're gonna get into 6-gingerol. Yes, 6-gingerol. All right, so 6-gingerol is a beast. You know what 6-gingerol comes from? It comes from Zingiberaceae. Zingiberaceae. Zingiber. What are we talking about? We talking about ginger. All right. Ginger. All right. The root ginger. Now, ginger is amazing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it goes back to when I was a kid, you know, getting tea from my mother, or it being hinted, you know, in certain foods that she was making. We know when it comes to holidays, and of course I'm not an advocate for holidays, but I'm definitely an advocate for family finally stop slaving for a bunch of other people and having enough time to actually come together and love one another, catch up on it. I get that. I love that, you know, and it just so happens that when that happens, there's usually the same type of scents and smells occurring. Aromatic smells like clove, like ginger, you know what I mean? Like cinnamon, things like that. So we're gonna draw 6-gingerol real quick. All right, put this up. So this is 6-gingerol right here. All right, notice the phenol group. Now right here we got a interesting molecule right here, oxygen, and a methyl group right there. We got this OH, you know, and then we also have these 6 peaks right here, you know. Remember, each point represents carbon. So all of these are carbon. That's a carbon, that's a carbon. All right, that's a carbon, 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 that's a carbon. Every point, every end is a carbon. Now, This is very structurally similar to another molecule we're going to get into shortly called curcumin, which you find in turmeric. All right, this is what gives, this is one of the many molecules that give turmeric that color, that bright yellow color that is used to, I mean, wow, just induce so many antioxidant properties inside the body that's able to, eradicate so many issues that occurred, autoimmune attacks, neurodegenerative diseases, things like that, Alzheimer's, how it's able to fight all that and really get involved with the nucleus and the genetic structures and your neurons and nerves. The curcumin really plays a huge role in that, and it's structurally similar to gingerol. And anybody who grades ginger knows that eventually as it starts oxidizing, it starts becoming more yellow. You know what I'm saying? It'll become a real bright yellow as it sits out, if you grate it. Because, you got to peel it first, then you grate it down, you got a pile of pulp and all this juice in it. It becomes more and more yellow the more it turns. And this ties back to when we started all of this off and I was getting into the whole photo and spectric aspect of everything. All right, so yeah, like I said, we got this phenol group with this OCH3 and OH. We have this chain on it with a double O and an OH, 6-gingerol from Zingiberaceae, or ginger. Ginger is awakening. It's antiseptic. It's this spice. If you ever have a cold, you ever got a flu, you ever got a fever, you ever feeling down, ginger, lemon, cayenne pepper. Yes, I know lemon is not on the list, but when I came up, my mother did give me lemon. I still use lemon to this day. Lemon was created for a reason. Lime is definitely a more potent citrus, and it's a more indigenous one, especially the ones with the seeds, of course, the key limes. But I am familiar and had great success in using slices of ginger, juice of lemon, along with a sprinkle of cayenne pepper inside 2 cups of water. Man, you drink that whenever you're down. That really gets the system going. Your body is going to get benefits of this 6-gingerol. All right. All right. So we got 6-gingerol. We went over rosmarinic acid, urushiol, and 6-gingerol already. So now we're going to get into another area, okay? The area of coumarin, okay? Coumadin, and warfarin. Yeah, this is deep, y'all. This whole part right here is deep. So we got we got something called Melalotus officinalis. Okay. All right. It's in the pea family. Remember, we went through all of the flowers, the flower parts, and we talked about the pea family being one of them. All right, we're going to get into the umbelliferone family, or the umbrella. I call it umbrella family, parsley, and all of that soon. But Melalotus officinalis, very interesting plant, also known as sweet clover. Sweet clover. So there's a farmer by the name of Ed Carlson. All right, and he had his farm, and he was the only one doing this. But the people that you usually remember the names of are the ones that kind of like do something about it. So this is the guy that is credited for getting up, getting out, and getting something. Okay. So what he did was he was dealing with a problem that a lot of other farmers were dealing with, where a certain crop that the cows would eat, once it got moldy, the cows would start dying. And the kind of syndrome, or rather that they would notice, was that the cows were bleeding to death. Imagine being a farmer and you raising your cows and everything, and they're just falling over, dying and bleeding to death. You don't know what's going on. Well, they come to find out that they were dying and bleeding to death because they were eating this particular weed. And this particular weed that they were eating was in a state where it was molding. So it wasn't when they were eating it fresh. It was when the actual plant started to mold that they would have these particular effects. So this farmer ended up taking his dead cows. He ended up taking the blood, which he noticed something very interesting about the blood, that it wasn't clotting. Okay, the blood wasn't clotting. And you got to remember, blood got viscosity. You know what I'm saying? Blood got viscosity. And the difference in viscosity is the fact that, you know, if I got a cup of water, you know what I'm saying, over here in this cup, and I have a cup of blood over in this cup, I'm like, KT, why you got blood? Well, this is the only thing that really makes sense as red and blue, I guess. One's water and one's blood, right? So the water is going to be, you know, less viscous than the blood, obviously, meaning that it's thinner. You know, the blood is thicker. They say it all the time. Blood is thicker than water. So the interesting thing about the blood that he had from the cows was that even after all this time of it sitting in the container that it had, you know, it didn't like clot up. It wasn't getting thick. And you know, when you get a scab, like your blood, it crusts up, you know. So he took all of this to a college, and there's a scientist at the college by the name of Link. I think his name was Carl Link. And this particular scientist, what he did is he was looking. He couldn't really figure it out at that time. You know what I mean? He knew that it had something to do with, you know, a chemical that was made by the plant. And that was the thing. Then it was, okay, we got to study this plant now and find out what this particular chemical is, you know. And once they found out the chemical, which was like 7 years later, that's when they started creating they started creating a particular product, you know, for the market, particularly a rat poison. And then from there, the rat poison ended up becoming an actual pharmaceutical. So we're going to go through that timeline real quick. That's what I'm saying, man. When you learn about the spices and the herbs, man, you learn about all the history, because all history is connected to the plants. You know what I'm saying? So they remember the farmer dropped it off to the scientists, and the scientists now they studying, right? So they ended up discovering something called dicoumarol. All right. Now, dicoumarol is really a dimer of coumarin. All right. So let's draw. I'm going to draw coumarin, and I'm going to draw dicoumarol as well. All right. So I know it's like, what am I looking at right now, right? So I'm going to erase that right there so you can just see this one, and then I'll draw it back again. But this right here is coumarin. All right. That right there is coumarin on its own. Now, when they studied that plant, that mellolotus plant, the sweet clover, what they ended up discovering was this, which was dicoumarol, which is just another way of saying what? Two coumarins. All right. Now, the reason why you're seeing the OHs and the connection is because, you know, in order for molecules to come together, there has to be compromise. When two people come together to live in a space together, you know, whatever you was on or whatever she was on, like, that's going to change, because y'all both have to compromise in order to fit y'all energy so that it flows properly into space. So you have changes that occur to molecules as they bond and become dimers, meaning two of something. You got tetramers, would be four of them, but we're talking about dimers. So these scientists that were trying to figure out what was the actual metabolite inside these plants, when in its molded state, remember, it wasn't in the fresh state. So in its fresh state, it probably, you know, the coumarin was probably in another form. But then when it molds, you see what I mean? It goes through certain pathways that then create, I guess, high amounts of this dicoumarol. So these high amounts of these dicoumarol, they found to be the component that was making the cows bleed to death. And how they were finding this out was through doing experiments. Now, were they doing experiments on human beings? I always think they do, but the ones that they usually have recorded that they talk about are the ones that they do to the animals. And specifically in this case, you know, what they usually use, and that's mice and rats. So In them doing the experimentation, they noticed that with certain quantities of this particular component, it would cause the mice to bleed to death. So then they turned it into a rodenticide, you know, a rodenticide. Rodenticide. Okay, y'all know homicide, y'all know genocide, y'all know suicide, right? Insecticide, vermicide. We're talking about rodenticide, in which they was making this particular molecule in order to do what? To kill rats. All right, they would bleed to death. So then, after they killed all these rats, they found out that, you know, because they had to find out what the toxicity was to humans. So it finds out that when they did a low dosage, that it was just a blood thinner, and it helped with all of these things, like a natural blood thinner from plants would do, which would be coumarin. So what they developed was something called coumadin. Okay, coumadin. All right, coumadin, as opposed to coumarin. Coumadin or warfarin. Now, I'm not a rocket scientist or nothing, but if I got a medication called warfarin, like, come on, man. Really? Yeah, I'm gonna take something called warfarin. Who I'm waging warfare with? Myself. So let's see what coumadin looks like. All right. All right, so this is coumadin or warfarin. All right, and you can see right here, all right, the coumarin part. All right, and then there's another phenol group in here. They threw this acetyl up here, like they added a acetyl, an acetyl group. We got different components now as they kind of compound this molecule together in order for it to do what? To be a messenger yet again. And in this case, what is the coumadin and what is the warfarin doing? What is it that coumarin does? Well, coumarin is dealing with blood thinning. We got the viscosity of blood being at a certain level, but there's a rate at which the blood has to stay, because if it's too thin, you're going to have a blood pressure problem. If it's too thick, you're going to have a blood pressure problem. You're going to have a problem transporting anything in the body. Okay, because swimming through a pool of water versus swimming through a pool of syrup, that's two different experiences right there. All right, so they ended up creating this synthetic molecule because, remember, you cannot patent life. You know, you can't patent nature. You can't patent these secondary plant metabolites. So they had to, you know, come up with synthetic molecular structures based on this source that they could patent. All right, and remember, they were creating a rodenticide in order to kill rats, and then ended up in proxy turning it over to, remember, warfarin is the rat poison. Okay, that's what that joint was called. And then they had to change it, you know, to coumadin, so it could sound more friendly. Just like rapeseed is called canola, because rape oil really doesn't play well in the supermarket. So this is the structure right here. Now, the interesting thing about the coumadin and the warfarin is the whole concept of blood thinning. All right. So, you know, when you get a cut, you know, there's stages. You know, you see the cut. Oh, you want to stop the bleeding. How do you stop the bleeding? You put pressure on it. You disinfect it, clean it first, because you don't want nothing that's going on out here to get up in there. So you manipulate that, and then you put pressure on it, you tighten it up, and then you give your body a chance to close it up on a micro level. You know, you deal with this macroscopic level, and then the body deals with it on a microscopic level and get things done. And it does this through platelets, all right, and it does this through fibrin, all right. Now, So this structure right here is vitamin K. All right, it's also known as phyloquinone. You hear about vitamin K, especially with children being born, because in the West Hemisphere's Western medicine's mentality of childbirth, they feel a need to inject a child with a synthetic version, not this version, but a synthetic version of this molecule, because they say the baby's blood is too thin when it's born and it's not clotting on its own, and if there's any damage, the baby could bleed to death, you know, so they want to give the baby this injection. You don't have to get it. A lot of states do pressure you to get it, but that's why you have to understand your body, your baby's body. So when people, you know, try to bring you game, you see it for game as opposed to just acquiescing because you don't understand, you know, the actual conversation topic that's at hand. Now, this molecule right here deals with coagulating the blood. All right, there's something called the coagulation cascade. All right, a coagulation cascade is a series of events. All right, just like dominoes. All right, just like dominoes, when one falls over and it hits the next one, it's a subsequent event, series of events that occur that yields, you know, some type of happening at the end, where it might just be, you know, Bugs Bunny with a carrot smiling when all the dominoes lay down. Who knows? But in your body, it's an effect, or you know, it's an enzyme or hormone being created. You know, so vitamin K in particular deals with fibrin going from a state called fibrinogen all right, to fibrin. Fibrinogen, that's what it is. All right, converting fibrinogen to fibrin, because when you get cut, all right, some type of blade, right, cuts through the skin, your blood vessels, all right, have little platelets inside. All right, and between the red blood cell and the platelets, what ends up happening is these platelets start to plug this up. And as they plug up, fibrogen turns into fibrin and creates a net. All right, so now you got something called a scab starting to form. And then other factors can then get introduced to actually regenerate that whole area and heal that space. But the whole concept is to plug up the hole. It's like, you know, if you're driving and you get a hole in your tire, you know, if you can't get a new tire, you get Fix-A-Flat, you know, you plug the hole up temporarily till you get somewhere where you could change the tire, you know. So that's what's going on here. So fibrin, you know, is one of the main components that's affected by vitamin K, you know, and K comes from coagulation. You know, I know coagulation starts with a C, but based on actually where the word comes from, it starts with a K. Coagulus or something. So vitamin K, standing for vitamin coagulate, you know, induces the coagulation cascade. All right, coagulation cascade, and this coagulation cascade yields the events that create what? A particular clot. Now, clots occur in certain areas of the body where there's a atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is plaque, you know, in between the actual vessel and the layer that the blood is flowing through. And what ends up happening is sometimes vitamin K can bind with a ruptured area where the atherosclerosis plaque is bust through. They see it as, the vitamin K see it as you got cut. So it starts, you know, going through the coagulation cascade, yielding a clot. Okay, this clot can flow through the body, you know, going through the arms, the legs, everywhere. And anywhere where there is an occlusion, meaning an area of the vessel where there's a narrowing of the vessel, it can turn into an embolism. All right, so you're dealing with a clot, a thrombus, so to speak, right, which is the actual clot, and it could create an embolism where it actually blocks the flow of blood, you know, from that point on, based on the narrowing, the occlusion of the vessels, and now the actual embolism, or the physical substance that has blocked the flow itself. All this happens. This is what a blood clot is. You know, so when you're dealing with having clots like that, herbs that have coumarin in there, these are pretty much all of the umbelliferaceae. Umbelliferaceae, okay? Because they look like umbrellas, even though there's no R there. That's what they're shaped like. We talked about that with the different plants, the different flower types, in the other video. So the umbelliferone, the coumadins, all of these are blood thinners. And if somebody's on a blood thinner, or if they have thin blood already, then you wouldn't want to take a plant that would thin your blood, because then you're going to do what ends up happening, you know. One second before we get into that, this vitamin K, like I said, is called phylloquinone. It is structurally identical to ubiquinone, or coenzyme 10, which is responsible for the overturn of electrons in our electron transport chain. So when you see CoQ10 in the store, it's really just a different version of vitamin K. Matter of fact, vitamin K in your gut, by way of your microbiome, converts it from vitamin K1 to vitamin K2, and vitamin K2 is actually the vitamin K that is very, very similar to coenzyme Q10. Okay, the Q10 standing for the 10 isoprene units on this particular quinone. All right, and so that's why it's good to eat what? Green leafy vegetables. Green leafy vegetables. Green leafy vegetables has polyporphyrid A, the PAs in there that also add to the CoQ enzyme, and then you also have the high amounts of the phylloquinone in there. That's why when they want you to be on blood thinners, they tell you don't eat no greens. You see what I'm saying? They don't want you to eat none of them greens. So blood thinner. So what ends up happening when the blood is too thin, then you start bleeding to death. All right? Bleeding to death. Because, you know, like a container that you got, if you have a Rubbermaid container to store your leftover food, it plays good for solid items, but you're not going to put the leftover lemonade in there because it really doesn't seal properly. You're going to have leakages. So when blood is real thin, it's easy to get in between spaces, because remember, your body is composed of a lot of cells. It's not just one continuous mass of something. No, there's joints and spaces and things that could leak through, and now you got an imbalance and you're bleeding to death, you know, losing blood. So that's what ends up happening. So with all of this, you have something called INR. INR, which stands for International Normalized Ratio. Okay, International Normalized Ratio, INR. And what that does is just a test that tells you you know, how thin your blood is. You know what I'm saying? And blood is interesting when it comes to the INR. You have, obviously, you're going to have a high number, okay? You're going to have a normal, okay? And you're going to have a low number. All right? High number means that it's thin. Low number means that it's thick. Okay? Normal means that everything's flowing, and that value should be a 1. So, you know, if it's higher than 1, you know, then you got some thin blood cracking, and if it's lower than 1, then you got some thick blood cracking. All right, so international, like I said, international normalized ratio, you got a number, normal value is 1. Anything higher than 1 is thin because, you know, fast, slow, and then thick. So this is Coumadin and warfarin. Warfarin is rat poison. Coumadin is rat poison, just in small dosages. And it's used to thin blood out, okay? You're going to find it, you know, in a lot of the Umbelliferaceae plants, okay? The parsleys, the phenols, you know, the parsnips, you know, stuff like that. That's where you're going to find it all at, you know? And you got to be mindful when you are making these herbs because, you know, if you have certain conditions, you just don't want to throw any old herb in there. You want to know what the herb is there to do. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm teaching, spreading rather, this information, because then people can become a little bit more aware and conscious and respectful when they're dealing with these plants. All right, so we dealt with that. So we're going to deal with Belliferone now. Okay, which really was just... All right, so this is Umbelliferaone. All right, you're gonna find that in parsnips and parsleys. You know, probably in fennel. You know, all of these plants that have this type of flower. You know, all of them. So then we have something interesting called Sorolin. All right. Now the difference between the coumarin and the umbelliferone is really the fact that there's this hydroxyl group over here. You know. Now when you're dealing with Sorolin, or Sorolin rather, it's this same structure with this oxygen here. Now, Sorolin is very, very interesting. It's in this category of science, PUVA. Okay, which is Sorolin, ultraviolet A. All right, so you know UVA, UVB, UVC. Well, see, we're going to be going in another area real soon in the future because the reason why plant secondary metabolites work so well is because of how the plant interacts with light to create these substances. And it's like, if that's the case, then I should be able to react with light and create particular substances too. So when we deal with diseases and disorders and a lot of the things that hold us down, we can really overcome a great deal of those diseases through light therapy, proper frequencies and wavelengths of light, pulses, you know, things of that nature, because that's how our body communicates and heals anyway. We just use plant, just like we use food as a medium for fuel for sunlight. It's the same thing, but we can actually take it up another level. So you have a branch of medicine that deals with exposing people to ultraviolet radiation, and people with like vitiligo, which is a disorder that deals with a decreased synthesis of melanin, as well as a great rate of catabolism of melanosomes and melanin, decreasing the melanin stores to the point where a person is being stripped of color, so to speak. So in vitiligo, in alopecia, which deals with balding and hair loss, with psoriasis and eczema and melanoma, solarins, all right, or plants that have sorolin, I said solarin, but sorolins in there, they're introduced by way of the skin, and then the skin is then exposed to ultraviolet. Why? Because this structure looks very similar. It looks similar to the nitrogenous bases, okay, that make up DNA, all right? The pyrimidines and the purines, okay? Now this structure, because of these oxygens, all right, that it has on here in this double bond, it's able to form adducts, adducts on the DNA. What I mean by adducts. All right, so we got DNA, we got the different colors here. We know that adenine and thymine connect, guanine and cytosine connect. And what an adduct is would be a molecule that can actually intercalate, like how DMT is able to do, meaning fitting in between the rungs, or actually bridging the two nitrogenous bases together, all right, and creating kind of like somebody who's tapping into fiber optics, like somebody who's trying to hear in to the phone. Back in the day, they'd find the phone box and tap in and listen. It's able to form adducts into the DNA and manipulate the DNA and how accessible it is and what it's being used for. And particularly in this case, with the ultraviolet light being shined up on the skin, and those skin cells that contain DNA inside reacting now to the ultraviolet light different. What does it do? Well, it increases the sensitivity of the skin by doing that. And what does that do? If you increase the skin sensitivity to it, then you increase the sensitivity of the melanocyte, or the cell that's responsible for producing the melanin in the first place. So for instance, if I know that it takes a certain temperature of 80 degrees and the sun being at a certain time on the beach for me to start darkening, that's a certain measurement of temperature, and of the sun hitting my skin in order to create the tanning. You see, so what this is doing is creating the sensitivity in the skin and in the melanocytes so that it becomes more sensitive to light, and that the melanin ends up getting produced in the case of the vitiligo and in the case of all the other skin disorders that are occurring. So solarins are very, very interesting. Remember, we still talking about phenols here. I haven't even gotten into the anthocyanins. We ain't even gotten the alkaloids. Alkaloids is going to be like its own course, because there's just so many. And that's when we get into all of what they would call the drugs, the cocaine, the meth, the mescaline, the psilocybin. There's so many plants that have them, and when you see some of these crazy structures they got, it starts to make a whole lot of sense. All right. So that was umbelliferone and Sorlin. So next we got a big boy. I talked about him earlier when I talked about 6-gingerol. All right, so we got curcumin up on the board. Curcumin is the active component inside of turmeric. Turmeric is the seasoning and the powder that's all the claim. Everybody's using it. A lot of people want to mix it with milks or dairy substances, and this is because of the fat content inside, but you don't have to go an animal route and do so. Matter of fact, you're going to actually kind of conflict the whole reason why you take it in the first place, because you're going to cause inflammation, introducing all of those plant proteins into your body. You know, you can always deal with a nut milk, you know, or seed milk, you know, or certain other oils that you can mix with it to create this to create a paste, to create a drink, to create whatever means you want to get it in. I mean, you could take it straight. It's also water soluble. That's why it mixes in with soups and so many things. A lot of cultures deal with turmeric from a culinary standpoint, cosmetic, you know, as well flavor. It itself doesn't really have a flavor that would really have you like lose your, you know what I'm saying, go crazy over. However, when it's combined though with other terpenes and other phenols from other spices and herbs, it creates complexes, and this is when you get into, you know, the Maillard reaction and you get into melanoidins. When I get further into the food sciences soon, you know, these complex molecules that are formed through the heat, the pressure, and these particular elements coming together. And you see this turmeric, you know, I mean, this curcumin is real strong molecule right here. Now, what really makes it stands out is this yellow color, and this yellow color comes from, you know, this curcumin molecule and how it interacts with light. You know, it creates a great pH test. You know, we're going to get into that with the anthocyanins. I got a great experiment that I'm going to show everybody to do at home. You can do it with the whole family, you know, but it plays a huge role in the NRF2 system with DJ1, dealing with Alzheimer's, all of these neurodegenerative disorders. You know, everything is so connected and so integrated. We find whenever we go we go to attack, you know, a particular pathology, we find ourselves taking care of other things that were issues in proxy, because all of these things are so connected and so interwoven. So you'll find how curcumin assists with Alzheimer's. You know, Alzheimer's being a situation with the tau proteins, which plays like grommets of genes holding together the stitch lines of the tubulin molecules that make up microtubulin, the alpha and beta tubulin, the little peanuts. They polymerize and depolymerize all the time, and by them doing that, how is a dianin or kinesin going to properly transport a vacuole full of newly made substances from your DNA if it doesn't have the street to walk on? If you're walking down the road to the bus and a crack opens up in the street and there's no more road, ground, or nothing, how are you going to walk anywhere? So you have these depolymerization and polymerization processes that take place based on the compromising of the tau protein grommet structures that form on the tubulin molecules. You know, and when those break down, you have loss of memory. And then you also have, as I explained before, with the plaque, the amyloid plaque substances and the amyloid precursor proteins. I have my little pauses too, y'all. The APP. When those amyloid plaques end up creating these frilly ciliary structures that bind, they end up blocking, you know, neuronal messages as well. So we have all these things occurring that messes with our memory. And even though we look at old folks as Alzheimer's is something we're all dealing with, because I can tell you what, I can't remember everything that happened when I was 2 years old or 4 years old, 5 years old. Or how about previous lifetimes? How about, you know, other dimensions that your spirit has, you know, been through, have dealt with in time, why, what is the problem, and the access, all of that. And that's when we get into the alkaloids. When you're dealing with the intercalation of the DNA by way of the dimethyltryptamine molecule, you know, it opens up doorways and pathways in order to make those accesses take place. So this is curcumin, all right? Turmeric. You know, you mix turmeric with another red dye like a natto, as I spoke before, achiote. That's how you get a real orange color. So if you're doing like a vegan mac and cheese, and you want that cheese to have that bright orange, or maybe you're making like a vegan nacho cheese or something for like some type of taco thing you're doing, and you want that bright orange, then something like an annatto mixed with the turmeric will create that bright, strong orange you're looking for without dealing with artificial food coloring like carmine, which is like beetles, or like, you know, beaver anuses and all of that. All right, so that's curcumin. All right, so now we're gonna get into the flavonoids. You got flavonoids. You got flavanols. You got flavins. You got isoflavones. You got about 8 of them, you know, and they all have a similar structure, you know, but I call them all flavonoids. All right. Now, when you see the word flavor or flavor, you think of Flavor Flav. You know what I'm saying? What made Flavor Flav stand out? He was the hype man. So with marketing and advertising of Public Enemy, he was the one that excited everybody, got everybody live. You know what a hype man is. Same thing with Busta Rhymes, you know, his man. You know, everybody had their hype man that really gets the energy popping out. When you're dealing with hype man's dealing with what? Promotion, marketing, getting people's attention. And in marketing and in getting people's attention is one color above all, and that color is yellow. All right, and this is why Flavor Flav would always shine his teeth. Now, I'm not saying his teeth was yellow, but we talking about goals, okay? So if you're talking about goals, you're talking about yellow teeth. Flavor Flav. And the funny thing about flavor or flav, okay, all of that, this part right here means yellow, okay? Okay, you got molecules called FAD, okay, which is flavin, adenine, dinucleotide. And then you got FMN, flavin mononucleotide. All right, these are structures inside of your electron transport chain in your mitochondria, yet again, that connects with succinate of the citric acid cycle. Okay, and if y'all are like, what are you talking about right now? Okay, so when carbs come inside of the cell and they get broken down through glycolysis, you know what I mean? All the sugars are getting broken down in pyruvate. Pyruvate are these two little chains of carbon that get created at the end of glycolysis. Lysis means to like rupture, to break, to split. Glycol dealing sugar, so you're breaking the carb, splitting the sugar, creating pyruvate. Pyruvate enters into the citric acid cycle, which is a multi-step process that removes water, removes carbon, and splits hydrogen into its relative proton and electron state. Then what ends up happening is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, the NADs, the coenzymes, they start to grab the electrons and bring them over to the electron transport chain, which now exists in the mitochondria. The previous steps exist like outside in the cytosol, and then everything is moved in the mitochondria, and the mitochondria starts working it. So as the citric acid cycle is rotating in the mitochondria, it's right next to the cristae of the folds inside of the mitochondria where the electron transport chain exists. So when you're dealing with succinate, which occurs inside of the citric acid cycle, that ties to desuccinate dehydrogenase that's actually complex 2, and it actually has the FMN center that receives an electron that combines with the other electron that came with the NADH dehydrogenase, which is complex 1, and they both get ferried over to complex 3. Okay, so flav means yellow, and we talking about flavonoids because we talking about flavor. Okay, and they all have a basic structure, so let's get that going. All right, so that's quercetin. All right, now quercetin is a flavonoid, a flavanol. It's one of the many flavonoids, rather. Once again, in the phenol group, you see the phenol groups that exist inside. Now, you remember with the coumadin, it had that oxygen, you know, inside that ring system on this end, and then there was a double bond to oxygen over here, but it's kind of flipped when it comes with these flavonoids, where the double bonds actually on this particular carbon, and then there's actually an oxygen at the top. All right, so this is the basic structure. Now, you find these in all the plants. Like, there's lots and lots of flavonoids. These are preliminary antioxidant manipulators. Okay, like these are the ones in the front line. These are the pawns that actually have more power and more respect than, you know, pawns actually do. You know, you don't think about them as little things. They're actually quite powerful and quite in grand number, and it's really how they're all able to combine with the other elements of the plant to create these massive structures that really influence us. So the difference between quercetin and some of these others is just differences in the amounts of the hydroxyl groups that exist here. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, if you add another H to any OHs that are over here, you're making water. You see what I'm saying? So you got hydrolysis that can occur. You have a means that you can bond to a lot of things. So in this case, if I remove this OH, that's all I got to do. Then guess what? It goes from quercetin to camphorol. All right, that's all. And then if I change that to a dash line, okay, and I remove that OH, now I have something more powerful called naringenin. Okay, naringenin is found in grapefruit and tomato paste. Tomato paste is just a fancy way of saying tomato concentrate. You move all the excess water, so you concentrate all that lycopene and all those other carotenoids that's deep inside that tomato. You'll also find a lot of the other properties, and one of them is this particular flavonoid called naringenin. Okay, naringenin. Naringenin is also an antioxidant. All of those particular properties that you know grapefruits are good for, that you want to implement inside your diet, is due to this particular component right here. All right, naringenin. All right. Now, after naringenin, we got silibin. Silibin is the active component inside the herb Silibum morianum. Okay, and for those who still don't know what herb I'm talking about, the common term is milk thistle. If y'all been following my everyday herb series I've been doing over the years, and even, you know, when I talk about herbs, I always bring the thistle family up. There's so many, it's such a diverse class. Milk thistle in particular, though, you can tell because it looks like all the other thistles, very prickly. The flower looks like a giant burdock flower, you know, purple, magenta, you know, type color. That's obviously from the anthocyanin content inside those petals right there. And it's a burr, you know, pardon me. Now, the leaves are prickly too, okay? And what makes the reason why it's called milk thistle is because it's kind of like a marble like design on the leaves, and it looks like the leaves look milky. All right, they look milky and marbleized, so they call it milk thistle. All right, but I think it's called that too because the seeds are just so potent with so many properties that it's almost like a milk, you know, for the soul, because we all know milk as being our food and our nutrition. Okay, not cow's milk, not cow's milk. So milk thistle is known as Silibum morianum, and inside Silibum morianum, you got silymarin. Okay, silymarin, and silymarin is composed of silibin, silibin A, silibin B, all different types of these particular phenol groups. So if you notice, this is a dope structure right here. You know what I mean? It's a composite. You see things are coming together. You can see that this is an element right here, okay? And that this is an element right here. This right here obviously is the same molecular structure as the flavonoids that we was just talking about, except, you know, when there was OHs here, you know, these little hydroxyl groups, right? We got a bond that took place, a hydrogen bond. They linked together, you know, those hydrogens get knocked away, and now you have this bond, you know, holding those together. These oxygens are strong, and these strong, powerful oxygen molecules is what's keeping this other phenol group attached. You know, it has another oxygen methyl group thing over here, similar to the gingerol and the curcumin that we showed, you know. But this is a very, very powerful molecule. And what are we dealing with? What health are we dealing with when we're talking about silibin, milk thistle, silymarin? We are dealing with, I need to bring out the red marker for this, right? And matter of fact, where is the black marker? Cool, I'll just do this purple, should work. All right, so the liver, all right, the liver. I might need to bring that falciform ligament is a kind of false. Only true physiologists know what I mean by that. My little falciform was false. Guess we do it right there. All right, so the liver, okay, home of all of the cytochrome P450 fam. All right, cirrhosis, hepatitis, fatty liver, okay, bile disorders, all of these things that could take the liver out the game. All right, this is when silibin comes in full effect because it directly deals with the Kupffer cells, the Kupffer cells. Okay, these Kupffer cells are these particular immune cells, T cells that exist inside the liver specifically. The liver is real interesting. It's made out of lobules, and these lobules are hexagonal. You know, they look like that. They're hexagons. You know, this is the side view of it. And if I was to slice that in half and we were to look down, it would look just like these phenols, a hexagon. All right, with, you know, the portal vein inside, the bile, you know, and the artery keep everything flowing. So the liver got like 5,000 functions, okay? All toxicity is dealt with in the liver. A lot of toxins stay in the body because toxins are hydrophobic and not hydrophilic, you know, and because they're hydrophobic and not hydrophilic, that means that they are going to get stored in areas where there's large amounts of fats and membranes and not really get passed out the body. You only gonna get passed out the body if you're aqueous, if you're hydrophilic, you love water, you're connected with the water, the kidneys can get you out. But when you're lodged in with your hydrophobicity, then, you know, you get stuck. So, you know, things like Silibin, they do that. They're able to get in there. The liver, that's what its number one function is to remove the toxins or turn toxins into workable things. How do you turn a toxin into something workable? Well, you could think of people building earth homes. You see what I'm saying? They take tires and they take old soda bottles and stuff and aluminum cans, and they build like these dome houses out of them that like are cool in the summer and warm in the winter. You know, that's how you taking trash or toxicity and you kind of repurposing it to use. Now, of course, you can build a more sustainable and a better home with better quality things, just like you could build another type of molecule out of in your body with good material. But it's like, because the toxins are there, the liver will figure out a way to use it so you don't lose too much energy in everything. You still get something out of it before it goes, you know. So the liver needs to be taken care of. And when we hear about the story of Prometheus, how he was chained to the mountain and an eagle would come by every day, eat his liver, it regenerated and would come back down. Well, that's you. Like your liver degenerates every day and you have to regenerate it. There is a hawk that comes on down and it eats that thing on up. And that's pretty much, you know, the body tearing up or utilizing all the aspects of the liver to do all the functionality it needs to do through cholesterol, through bile, through everything, you know. And then with the liver just getting emaciated, you know, it's just done, you know, it regenerates and bounces back every 24 hours. So, you know, I find a lot of these myths being really allegorical representations of psychology, and they really don't have a face behind it, because we know what culture is responsible for introducing all this stuff, regardless of how many ways it gets retold. All right. So this is Silibin, you know, real powerful molecule, you know, and it deals with the health of the liver, you know, it's particularly the seeds of the milk thistle, where you find these components at. All right. Now, all right, so I'm actually getting ahead of myself. Let's not go that deep just yet. We're just gonna do that. All right, so this is saffron. Okay. Saffron. Saffron you find mainly in sassafras. Okay. Sassafras is a real powerful herb. I mean, when it comes to this land, it's very holy. Matter of fact, when you think about gumbo seasoning, you know, that's how everybody in Louisiana season their gumbo, is actually powdered sassafras leaves. And that goes back to the Choctaw. Indigenous peoples of this land, they really utilize that sassafras very well. There's a reason why gumbo and some of these dishes speak so much to our soul, because of the saffron that was inside of the sassafras. All right. Sassafras was also the main component of root beer. All right. That gave its flavor also, and the kind of vibe you get. Remember, when you drink these things, it's not just the flavor, it's kind of the mood it puts you in, which means it has to manipulate, you know, the brain in some capacity. Now, the thing about the sassafras and the saffron is that this is the main component, all right, in order to make MDMA, okay? And MDMA is what? 3,4 methylene dioxy methamphetamine. All right, or Molly, ecstasy. Okay. See, the minute I start writing on it, you hear that in the background, right? No, I'm not teaching nobody how to make it, but even Molly and ecstasy, MDMA, which we think is a synthetic thing, is actually from a plant. They pull the oil, all right, the saffron out of the sassafras or the ocotillo out of South America, and only thing they do is manipulate the molecule so that that double bond turns into methyl groups. You add an amine. Let's put a nitrogen, you know, a little amine group right there. And now you have, now this is MDMA. Just by making that change, which is a couple steps with some metals and, you know, a couple chemical reactions and everything like that. But they utilize saffron in order to do this. 90% of all the ecstasy and all the MDA and all that stuff comes from saffron, specifically ocotillo. However, sassafras is one of the greatest suppliers of it right here in the States. And when you look at gumbo mix and gumbo seasoning, look on the bag, you're going to see what it is. And the leaves have this mucilage-like quality to it. So that's how gumbo, you can have the okra that gives it a little bit of mucilage, you know, to it. But that sassafras, a lot of people don't know, give it too, you know, and that's what gives it the flavor. But like I said, I'm just building up towards the food science so people can really understand what it means to cook. It's not just about heating up food so it's palatable to put down your throat. No, it's about an experience. Transmute. Get the best that you can out of a thing because you got organoleptic, okay? Organoleptic qualities. You got to keep that in mind. Organoleptic, which deals with the senses. How does food influence your senses? What is the smell? What is the taste? What do you hear? There's a hear, okay? Don't tell me people that eat pizza and hot dogs don't like the sound that it makes when you bite into the cheese pizza and it stretches. Like, it's all senses, okay? When you bite into an apple, that's that crunch. When you slaughter in a mango, that juicy feeling, like all of that. There's smell, there's taste, there's everything. So, you know, this was just another stage in the phenol representation. What we're going to do is we're going to get a little bit more into Molly and the 3,4-methylene methamphetamine, that whole thing, the story with that, because it's still in the phenols. And then we're going to bridge into anthocyanins, which are the purple, magenta, fuchsia colors that make up the berries and the flowers and the pretty leaves, pretty purple colored leaves that you see. We're going to talk about that aspect as it relates to a couple experiments that I got that I want to show you. Real dope. So we'll get through that, and then after that, we'll be getting into alkaloids and a couple other things. Like I said, plants, man, it goes on forever. Y'all said y'all been wanting this information. Well, here it is. I hope y'all enjoyed this next tape, this part 2, and I look forward to jumping into the next chapter. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.